from the blackest corners of your mind, they call, pulling you deep into shadow, twisting your senses, keeping you from sleep. It's time to face your darkest fears. This is Tales to Terrify. Good evening, children of the night, and welcome. We have one longer tale for you this evening that takes us into the unforgiving depths of space. So in the interest of conserving valuable oxygen, we're going to dive right in. Our tale tonight comes from Jade C. Wildy. Jade C. Wildy returned to writing in 2020, concentrating on speculative fiction but branching out into fantasy, science fiction, and horror. Through her stories, she examines themes like death, psychological states, and being different, and delights in slipping in the unexpected. She believes in the power of storytelling as a motivator for change, and her writing has been included in numerous publications internationally. A self-confessed wallflower, Jade lives in Australia and can be found writing or drawing in the local cafes. Children of the night, join me for Jade C. Wildy's The Simplicity of Disputed Assertions, originally published as The Occam's Razor in Death Beyond, Mortem Cycle 3 by Nordic Press.
With all things being equal, the simplest explanation is most likely to be correct. William of Ockham. This is a disputed assertion. I stare at the light bulb above the solid square of the inner airlock door. It indicates if the door is locked or unlocked. Currently, it is green. Unlocked. It hums. It's the only sound I can hear on this dead ship other than my own thundering heartbeat. With the airlock door to the rest of the ship electronically locked, no attempt to open it would work. No glitch could budge it either. It was on its own circuit. I wait for the green lock light to turn red. Red means it's locked. Red means I'm safe. I can barely breathe. My chest heaves and my heart pounds from the adrenaline-fueled dash to the safety of the airlock. The ship that was once a 6-crew deep space survey called the Occam's Razor is now nothing but a tomb. A slight grinding sound joins the buzzing of the light bulb. I frown and glance down. The manual release wheel I had spun shut moments before remains secured in place. There's nothing to suggest the door was somehow being opened from the other side. I look back up at the light. Still green. Come on! Desperation makes it come out like a shriek. As if woken to action, the light turns red. I let out a ragged, relieved breath I barely realized I had been holding. The door is finally confirmed locked, forming an impenetrable barrier between me and the rest of the horrors on the razor. I am captured in a 6x6 meter box, lit only by the glow of the red lock light. But I am safe. Droplets of my sweat drift through the air, mixing with the little orbs of what I assume is blood hanging in the 0G. Maglock boots hold me to the floor. I flinch as I catch slow movement at the corner of my eye. My maglocks hinder my movement as I twist unceremoniously to see what it is. It was just the large bolt riveter suspended in the air like Martian kites, flying in the vacuum of the Lunar Nova Festival. I miss the festivals back on Mars, I think to myself. Get a grip, Morag. I bat the rivet gun away and let my body relax. If I was in a planetary gravity well, even a 0.38 G1 like Mars, I would have dropped to the floor. But here, where there is no gravity, I sway like seagrass and think of home, light years away. Tears collect in my eyes. Blinking them makes the salty liquid cling to my eyelashes. I brush them away with a filthy hand to drift through the air. I doubt I will ever see Mars again. Help is coming, but my new home has limited air. It isn't designed for long stays. My rescue could come too late. Does it really matter? I whisper to the dark. I close my eyes and think about what happened. I miss the obvious all the time. They say it's deep space CPTSD. That's being charitable. I call it being an airhead at best, a burnt-out nutcase at worst. Thoughts tear through my mind like rapid fire. How much of what had happened was my fault? How many details did I miss because I vague out? How many things happened during a blank? How many people wouldn't be seeing Mars again because I had my thighs wrapped around Scout? I extend my arms outward and close my eyes to the dim, red light bulb above the airlock door that hums. My mind is a black expanse of overload. I am probably slipping into a blank. The grinding sound stops. And then it starts again. I frown and look again at the inner door. Nothing. With a growing sense of dread, I turn to look behind me, towards the outer airlock door. The door that my rescue would eventually dock with. Surely they couldn't be anywhere near close. The light bulb above the door was still red. Red means locked. Red means safe. The door was locked and safe. It was red. Yet the grinding sound continues. Grub's up, I called up the ladder to Ops. Coming, someone answered. I pulled a pot of kibble out of the warmer and sat at the kitchen table. At the Ops ladder, an upside-down face appeared. Teddy drifted down head first, datapad in hand. He grabbed the ladder to put himself in a somersault spin to reorient with the rest of us. As his boots touched down, they snapped to the floor and he moved to take another pot from the warmer. What did the captain have to say about your samples? I asked the scientist as I chewed my kibble. A grin spread across Teddy's face, quickly turning into a frown as Scout came through the door, shoving past him to drop his muscular frame onto the seat next to me. Scout pulled the bench strap across his lap to keep him anchored before slapping the table. Hit me, kid. Don't call me kid. Teddy scowled at Scout, but I doubt he noticed or cared. Teddy spun a kibble pot towards Scout from across the kitchen, just as Captain Nimue and her executive officer, Carrie, dropped down the ladder. They both looked like they jumped as if in gravity, but I knew it was just a stiff push off the bar at the top. Life in space had a remarkable tendency to emulate life in a planetary gravity well. The pot intended for Scout caught Carrie on the shoulder and spun off course. "Damn it! We don't have the food to spare to have you playing catch with it," the XO yelled. "It's fine, the pots are sealed," Scout told her, as Nimue plucked the tumbling kibble pot out of the air. "Sure, Scout, you can take that attitude because it's not your responsibility to account for the books. When you have to worry about replacement," Carrie continued ranting, and I tuned out. The captain handed the pot to Scout. It was her job to soothe our XO and finance guru's ruffled feathers. As if any of the rest of us could, I thought to myself. I shared a look with Teddy over my dinner as Carrie and Nimue left the kitchen with their pots to talk in private. Scout shrugged next to me and continued skewering little balls of whatever they were and scarfed them down. I watched Scout eat with gusto. Very little bothered him, including pissing off the second-in-command XO. Although, even I admit he was terrifying when his back was up. Teddy sat down with a pot. I think Carrie is on edge because of me. Scout dismissed it with a flick of his fork. Don't you worry, kid. Carrie was born on edge. Don't call me kid. Whatever you say, Squirt. I shouldered Scout to shut him up. He raised an eyebrow at me. Why do you think it's you? I asked Teddy. Teddy was the youngest on the ship by a full decade, and prone to the youthful assumption everything was about him. That last lot of samples we took in the asteroid belt came up with nothing useful. I mean, there was some interesting properties, sure, but nothing we could stake out and claim a spotter's fee. Teddy's shoulders sagged. I reckon she and the captain don't think I know how to do my job. I did finish my studies in compositional science. I graduated right before we shipped out. Teddy was defensive and more than a little sulky. He was obsessive about his job. He launched into a detailed explanation of the analysis, and my mind vagued out. I'd been doing that a lot. I chalked it up to deep space fatigue. Too many hours working with too little mental shut-off time. Scout closed the cap on his kibble pot, smacking his lips. I leaned close to him to whisper in his ear, "Want to grab a beer?" A slight smile creased the corner of his mouth. He didn't turn to me, but tilted his head closer. "My place or yours?" I eyed off Teddy across the table. He was engrossed in his datapad. With Nimue and Carrie elsewhere, nobody was listening. Deck 2, maintenance corridor. It was where we had been working earlier in the day. He smiled and slipped out of his lap belt and left the kitchen. We weren't a couple, and partners only meant that we were both service engineers covering different ship systems. But we got along well, despite each of our quirks. Honestly, a good shag was a convenient stress release. I smiled as I finished eating. Scout was definitely a very good shag. I slipped my arms into the sleeves of my standard-issue ship jumpsuit and shrugged it up over my shoulders, almost tripping on the panel impact riveter. I was sure it had been properly stowed a few compartments away when Scout and I knocked off a few hours earlier. Scout must not have secured it properly, I told myself as I took it back. He had already left, so I couldn't ask. He wasn't the pillow talk type. Not that there were any pillows on the maintenance deck. My datapad had been beeping when we were occupied, so I had turned it off. The moment I turned it back on, it lit up with a barrage of messages. Shit. Several of the messages were systems generated, but the last one was a direct message from Captain Nimue demanding I present myself in ops. The kitchen doubled as the ship's meeting room because it fit everybody in. But if she wanted to see someone separately, she called them to ops. It meant something serious. I hurried to get there. Scout was already in the kitchen when I arrived, and he gave me a friendly salute as I passed him. It was hard to tell if he was really good at not acting guilty or just didn't care what anybody thought. I blushed on his behalf as well as mine. Teddy was glued to his datapad but waved a coffee canister in the air to ask if I wanted one. I shook my head and climbed the ladder. Nimue and Carrie were in ops, poring over a screen set in the center console with their backs to me. I cleared my throat to let them know I was there. Carrie looked over her shoulder. "Did you open an airlock on the maintenance deck?" Direct as always, but the question wasn't what I expected. I frowned. No, why would I open an airlock? I moved to stand next to her and Nimue. Carrie ignored my question. Well, apparently neither did anyone else, yet one opened and closed. She waved her hands over the data displayed on the screen. "We've got the action alert. It's in the system log." "Could it be a glitch?" I suggested. "Nope. See the O2 levels in that area? Definitely vented all the atmosphere in the airlock and adjoining corridor." I felt a chill looking at the column of information. Scout and I definitely left those corridors full of Atmos. A glitch could open the airlock, or an unstowed tool or loosened panel might trigger the door. But for that to cause a vent of the Atmos was unlikely. "What do the external cameras show?" Nimue pulled up the camera feed. It was slow to respond, so she cleared the command and tried again. It was still sluggish, but started cycling through the camera views. We got a glimpse of the outside of the airlock in question and the corresponding side of the ship before the screen dissolved into pixels and went completely black. "Damn it!" Carrie exploded. She threw her hands in the air. "First an airlock, now this!" She started to pace in a circle. Nimue shook her head. "Carrie, you know the ops screen does this from time to time. Calm down. I'm sure there's a simple explanation." She sounded worn. A lifetime of deep space travel was taking its toll. "Simple is not cheap. We don't even have the budget for a full overhaul this ship is going to need, particularly if Teddy keeps turning up interesting rocks rather than mineral resources we can profit from." Carrie jabbed a finger towards the ladder that led back down to the kitchen where Teddy was sitting. I felt a familiar queasiness of addressing Carrie directly, but braced myself and spoke up. "Scout and I get the samples. Teddy tests them. None of us knows if we have pay dirt or another bog standard rock until the results come in. It is the risk we all took when we went into uncharted deep space. No one knows what is out here." "Oh, thanks for your input, Morag. I had no idea uncharted meant no one had charted what was out here." Carrie almost spat the words at me. I shut my mouth. It wasn't worth the argument. My scalp prickled as I felt myself losing focus, and I shook my head to try and clear it. Nimue held a hand up between me and Carrie to draw the words to a close. Did she know I was feeling vague? Or was it just not productive to keep going over it? Carrie drew her arms around herself and stopped talking. She always listened to Nimue. You could believe it was a respect for the captain's position, but we all knew how much Carrie loved her, be it at a distance. Frankly, I didn't care. I don't like Carrie, and she doesn't like me. I'm too old for this game, Nimue sighed. Let's take this discussion back down to the others. Our captain had been increasingly withdrawn on this trip. I followed them down to the kitchen. So I think it must have come off the last lot of samples. That's good, Teddy, I told him, not knowing if it was good or not. Teddy floated on the other side of the table, working on his datapad, talking at an oblivious Scout. Teddy's position made it look to me as if he was lying down, but his posture was more like he was standing horizontally in mid-air. For some reason, the standard up and down orientation most ships adopted from our gravity well heritage didn't apply to the 20-something-year-old scientist. Have a seat, everyone. Nimue caught Teddy's maglock boot and pushed it towards the metal deck so that he could walk towards the table and take a spot. I sat next to him, Scout across from us. Fresh coffee canisters were already locked to the tables waiting for us. Carrie sat on the other side of Teddy. Nimue leaned on her hands at the head of the table. Okay, I've checked with you all about the airlock. Each of you knows how precious our air is and that we can't waste great swags of it in space. The O2 scrubbers can't cover it. If, for whatever reason, someone triggered that airlock, I need you to come and let me know. While it's not great that somebody is opening airlocks, a system glitch that vents our atmosphere is by far a bigger issue. I would rather know it was just some stupid prank. She looked around the crew. No one spoke. Teddy drummed his fingers on the table. Are we sure it was us? Everyone turned to look at him. He shrugged with one shoulder. It's just that the most recent samples are so different. And it is deep space, right? No one has been out here. At least not many people. And nobody's put down markers to claim a stake. What are you suggesting, Teddy? Nimue's voice was calm and even, although her tone suggested fatigue. Teddy licked his lips. What if it's aliens? Scout almost choked on his coffee, small droplets floating in the air as he spluttered out laughter. Oh my God, really, Teddy? It's just that the samples... Teddy reached for his datapad. Carrie clenched her jaw. Give me strength. Teddy, no one wants to hear about your stupid rocks. Aliens? Be real. We all know what it is. She looked at Scout. Scout fixed Carrie with an unblinking stare. Which is... His voice was remarkably even, without even the tiniest hint of aggression. But something in him tensed up. Carrie returned his glare. Shit, poor maintenance. Nimue cleared her throat. Come now, Carrie, it's an old ship. No, don't make excuses. Everyone on board knows our service engineers have better things to do than their jobs. I watched Scout. His face remained impassive. If anything, he had relaxed. He shrugged one shoulder. We can do both. The color rose in my cheeks. A small muscle in Carrie's jaw twitched. She abruptly stood to lean over the table, the strap across her legs preventing her from actually standing. Can you, Scout? Which service manual cites that doggy style or reverse cowgirl is the proper way to do maintenance? Scout frowned. You know, in 0G, they're basically the same thing. I mean, Morag, Scout, I hissed. My face burned. What? They are. Scout looked puzzled. Carrie turned to me. Yes, Morag, you have something to tell us? In that instant, I hated Carrie and I wished I could have thrown her out an airlock. Nimue saved me from saying more. Carrie, that's enough. Space is lonely enough, and there aren't any rules about what crew can do in their downtime. But we do have a code of conduct, which includes making accusations. I have no reason to believe that Scout and Morag's activities have impacted their work, and it is for me alone as captain to call behavior out, should it be necessary. Carrie looked as if she had been slapped. I know all about space loneliness. She said it to the room, but it was clear her words were meant for Nimue. I'm going to check out the airlock myself. She undid her lap strap and left. Nimue dropped her head down and took a breath, massaging her temples. If anyone has anything else to say, I'll be in ops. She drifted up the ladder. Scout drained off his coffee canister. Hey, Morag, I reckon we should add an electrical diagnosis to tomorrow's roster. What with all the stuff? He spoke as if the humiliating conversation hadn't happened, and it was just a routine crew meeting. He smiled at me, and then pointed at Teddy. Aliens! Wow, kid, and they say you don't have a sense of humor. He chuckled to himself as he left the kitchen. All crew to the cargo hold. The ship-wide broadcast woke me from a deep sleep. Not restful, but one of passed-out exhaustion. I was momentarily disoriented until a familiar shape of my crew quarters registered in my sodden brain. I exited the bunk straps and carefully slipped out of bed, feeling about for my maglock boots. I encountered Scout on my way to the cargo deck. What's this bout? A mark on his jumpsuit spanning his broad shoulders betrayed that he hadn't changed clothes either. Dunno. Hey, Scout, why didn't you just shoot Carrie down when she said that we were shagging? He arched an eyebrow at me. We are. Nothing wrong with shagging. No one says we can't. Captain made that clear. Well, yes, but the others... Scout pulled up to look directly at me. Morag, we can stop it if it bothers you. I mean, I'd rather not stop because I like it, but it's cool if you don't want to no more. I ain't the type to force someone. Yes. No. I want to keep doing it. It's just, I didn't really know what I was trying to say. Know what? Forget I mentioned it. Okay, cool. Scout smiled and continued walking. I looked at the ceiling and sighed to myself. Oh, to have the wiring of someone who wasn't bothered by anything. I shrugged it off and caught up with him as he hit the door lock release, revealing Nimue and Teddy crowded into the corridor. Carrie is dead. Teddy's voice was flat. As he moved, I saw the shape beyond him was Carrie. Her face was ashen with sickly blue lips. She was suspended at an awkward angle, with only one boot locked to the floor, looking like she was taking a huge step. The collar on her jumpsuit was open, the zipper floating on its own as if it had been torn off. I was stunned. Shit, what happened? Scout asked, stepping around me to get a closer look. He peered intently at her face. Looks like she suffocated. He took a hold of her free-floating, outstretched leg and pushed it towards the floor, where her boot magnetized to the deck. And not long ago, rigor mortis has only just started to set in. What's all the sticky shit? I didn't want to consider what bodily fluids constituted sticky shit to Scout. Nimue closed her eyes as if trying to center herself before shaking her head slightly. How could this have happened? She looked at Scout and me. I flinched. For a moment, I thought it was an accusation until I realized she was asking the service engineers. Scout looked at the door panel. These corridors ain't normally kept in Atmos. You got to vent one to fill the next. Not like the crew quarters and kitchen. Everyone nodded. It was common knowledge, although only Scout and I regularly had to use the vent cycling systems. You can set it up to automatically cycle back and forth if you want a clear path, but you need to know how. That's done up in ops, and there are safeties. Heat sensors mostly, I offered. Programming and electrical was more my thing. Right. Even if she backtracked, the system should have picked it up, unless the sensors were off. I guess it could have glitched. Scout tilted his head, looking over Carrie. Don't know if it being the second glitch makes it more or less likely, but the other possibility is someone cut her air. Stunned silence greeted Scout's words, broken by Nimue. Where was everyone? Who saw her last? I went to my lab. My specimen started sweating this weird... Nimue cut Teddy off with her hand. Scout, I was alone in my quarters, not Shag and Morag. Scout offered. I died inside. I was also alone, I added, through gritted teeth. And I was looking through the system logs in my quarters, Nimue added. So, Carrie did it to herself? Scout said what we were all wondering. Nimue let out a noise that was half gasp, half sob. Scout ignored her. I think we should get Carrie out of here. He looked at Teddy. Get her boots, would you? Teddy nodded and stooped to turn off Carrie's maglocks so they could float her out of the corridor, leaving me with Nimue. Inwardly, I cringed at being left to comfort the captain of the Occam's Razor. Nimue took a shuddering breath before speaking. I knew how Carrie felt, but as captain, I have to maintain distance. She swallowed hard. You and Scout, cherish what you have. Nimue turned to follow the others. Nimue thought it was her fault Carrie killed herself. And worse, the big romance everyone seemed to think Scout and I had wasn't anything like that. I followed her to the cargo bay, feeling guilt I couldn't quite place. The cargo bay was just a large space with access to an airlock. Not the one that had glitched, but one big enough to hold anything we brought in. Besides a few crates of samples Teddy wanted to keep, and some claim registration markers, it was nearly empty. Carrie lay in a large crate normally used to store samples as proof of a claim. The inner trays could be removed for larger samples and occurrences such as this. Just inside the door, Scout caught my arm. I slowed to a stop. I've been thinking about all this. The sensors should have picked up that Carrie was still in an area that needed to be vented. Heat signature should have triggered the safety. His voice was uncharacteristically low. And if it glitched out? I asked him, crossing my arms over my chest and watching Nimue lean over Carrie's body. Teddy was checking his sample crates. Scout shook his head. She still would have been moving from Atmos to Atmos. The vent don't start until one door opens and the other closes. We both know that. I nodded. And the doors won't open from Atmos to vacuum, so the rush of air doesn't damage anything. The implication gave me a growing sense of dread. Exactly. So it had to be a manual vent, right? Carrie was a lovesick, high-strung bitch. But when she said, check out the airlock. She was not suicidal. Nimue's icy voice came from behind us. Sorry, Cap. Didn't mean no disrespect. Just recounting what I see. And the way I see it, a glitch couldn't do this. My breath caught in my throat. Shit. Scout, you really think someone murdered her? Nah, not really. But it does look like someone sabotaged the ship. The glitch just don't make sense. And if I were going to kill someone, that's how I'd do it. Nimue gave Scout a searching look. I can't see how any of us benefit from sabotage. It would get us out of this godforsaken deep space if we had to go back. The words came out of my mouth before I considered how they sounded. I just implicated myself. Nimue frowned at me. That may be so, but if we go back empty-handed after all the months we have spent in deep space, no one wins. Well, except maybe Teddy. He's found himself some pretty pebbles. Nimue nodded to Teddy with his samples. At the mention of his name, Teddy looked up. Anyone been messing with my crates? No one's been violating your rocks, kid, Scout called as Teddy drifted towards us, avoiding the crate containing Carrie. It's just that there's marks of some kind of residue on the crates. Well, in future, wash your hands so you can keep your residue to yourself. If looks could kill, Scout would have been joining Carrie. Okay, it's been a long night. I want to see everyone in the kitchen tomorrow to discuss how we proceed. Get some sleep. Nimue turned and left the cargo bay. It wasn't like her to just bail on her crew, especially after one of them died. We gave her space and chatted about work, my home on Mars, and Teddy's insane aliens theory, while we waited for the Atmos cycles to move along with Nimue, so we could restart the vent cycle. I turned to see how Teddy was faring. Far from horrified, he looked calm, prodding at a dark mark on the wall. He turned to Scout and me. I need to discuss my specimens with the captain. His voice was distant, detached, and he turned away without another word. Were they acting weird, or was it just grief? I turned to follow Teddy down the corridor. As the light above clicked to green, Scout put a restraining hand on my chest. He was watching Teddy leave, his eyes flickering to me as if to say, "Wait a moment." Teddy muttered about us having better things to do as he left, but something told me a shag wasn't what Scout wanted. I turned to him. "Scout, why do you have to be such a jerk to Teddy?" "What? It was funny. I'm just teasing him. Kid's so serious about his rocks. I mean, he barely even looked at Carrie." I rolled my eyes. So he doesn't like dead bodies. Who does? Scout shrugged. A dead body is just an alive one that ain't breathing no more. And for the record, I don't think you killed Carrie, just so you know. Nimue thinks it was me. This is what he wanted to tell me. Oh, Scout, I doubt that she... The look in his eyes stilled my lips. Look, I don't get emotions. I don't understand them unless I've been in the situation myself. I can't tell what people are feeling unless they tell me. But I do know what suspicion looks like, and suspicion is dangerous. I think everyone is just tense, I told him. What suspicion in Scout's past had been dangerous? And to whom? What did I really know about my part-time screw and service engineer partner? I hoped there was no suspicion on my face as I shook my head. She's under a lot of stress. I don't think she suspects you. Why not? It has to be someone on this ship. I couldn't think of anything to say to that. None of us had alibis, Even I didn't. Well, by that logic, it could have been me. I have dizzy spells and vague out. Who knows what I could do when I'm not myself? I meant to sound light and dismissive, but Scout was looking at me with a calculating expression that sent me cold. Then he cracked a grin. Nah, Morag, you couldn't have opened that airlock while you were riding my dick. I laughed along with him, more out of tension than any humor. Christ, he thought I was confessing. What would he do if I actually thought I was a murderer? I looked over his broad shoulders and muscled arms. He was strong. That's what I liked about him. Chilling realization dawned on me that I wouldn't stand a chance if I had to defend myself against him. He crossed his arms over his chest and stared at the floor. I think it's Teddy. I blinked. What? The skinny little science geek? Carrie laughed at him about his aliens. You said it yourself. Sabotage gets us back from deep space. Teddy's the only one who would benefit from that. Carrie didn't kill herself. Well, I don't think Carrie did. You have to admit, the kid is weird. An assessment of somebody as weird, coming from Scout, was certainly the pot calling the kettle black. But capable of homicide? I shook my head. Scout shrugged. He was calm for someone accusing someone of being a murderer. Time will tell, but, you know, Morag, I won't let anything happen to you. And that's because I like you, not just because we're shagging. Later, I sat and brooded in the kitchen. I hadn't even tried to avoid vaguing out. Nimue was in ops. When I saw her briefly, her puffy eyes betrayed she had been crying. Scout had appeared, grabbed a coffee canister, and announced he would be back so we could move the shit show discussion on and get to the maintenance part of the ship. I felt like he wanted to make sure it wasn't a glitch or shoddy maintenance. Then again, maybe I was just projecting. I decided to go and get him, figuring I'd check the crew quarters first. I hit Scout's door buzzer and stood outside, thinking everything over. What could Scout do to someone he didn't like? I listened to the hiss and clunk of the Atmos for who knows how long, staring at the mottled wall on the other side of the corridor. I was afraid. Not just at the idea that there was a murder among the people I had mostly known for years. Teddy had only signed on for this trip. Or because I could easily see Scout committing murder if he felt it was justified. But because I honestly couldn't discount myself. I had no alibi besides being with Scout when the airlock opened and closed. Maybe that one truly was a glitch. Scout hadn't responded, so clearly wasn't in. My head swam with my thoughts, and I felt the edges of a blank coming on. I leaned a hand on the corridor wall, but snatched it back immediately. It was sticky. Absent-mindedly, I had placed my hand on a strange dark patch. Was it blood? It didn't feel quite like how I imagined blood would feel. It was almost oily, and blood didn't make sense anyhow. In my vague state, I rolled my fingers over my palm. Then the lights went out, and I couldn't hear the Atmos cycle anymore. On the edge of panic, I fumbled my way along the wall, looking for the comms panel that was next to the door. My fingers brushed over the buttons, and I took a literal stab in the dark. At worst, I would trigger the logs and it would record my heavy breathing. Nothing happened. The whole circuit was out. My hopes dashed. I groaned at the thought of having to manually open the door locks. At least the crew quarters were close to ops, in the kitchen, rather than decks away, and this whole section was kept in Atmos, so I wouldn't have to manually arrange vent cycles. It would be slow going, but I didn't want to hang outside Scout's empty quarters in the dark. I tugged the lock lever to unlock the door. It was stiff and barely budged. I disengaged my maglock boots and set one against the wall to yank the manual lock lever sideways. The mechanisms inside the door made a grinding sound that echoed in the silence of a corridor with no air circulating. That's another thing people living planetside don't get. There is no sound in space, and no silence on a spaceship. The systems keeping you alive always hummed. My breath came in shaky gasps that sounded like roaring in the silence. This was what it would be like to be buried alive. The lock lever I was yanking on that prevented the doors from being opened to vacuum moved slightly. I strained against it. How much of my limited oxygen was this strenuous activity using up? Panic gripped me. I thought of Carrie's deathly blue lips. Who killed her? I wondered. In this utter darkness, anything could be slowly coming towards me through the air, and I wouldn't know it. Frantically, I pulled on the lever. The next corridor might be just as dark, but I felt something was in with me. The lock lever budged a fraction more, then gave way. If the corridor had light, the bulb over the door would have turned green as it unlocked. I spun the manual door lock wheel as quickly as I could, and it slid open a fraction. I didn't even bother to wait until it was fully open before shoving my way through. The corridor beyond was just as black. I kicked the door gap hard to shoot through to the other side, just as I felt the monster behind me was doing, coming for me. I collided hard with the other door and started pawing at it, looking for the lock lever. I am being stupid and wasting precious air, my mind whispered. But I was beyond rational thought. I yanked hard on the lock lever. It moved a little. I braced myself again against the wall for another go, when suddenly it gave way. The abrupt movement threatened to spin me as the lock wheel gave and the door opened. Something was coming through. Suspended mid-air, I was helpless as a hand grasped my throat. I screamed and battered at it. Another hand caught my arm, and I kept fighting. My arms were forced to my sides and pinned. Morag, it's me. Something familiar slipped into my senses. The arms, his scent. Scout had a hold of me. I burst into tears. I'm sorry, crying because of the dark. I was still holding on to him fiercely. Don't apologize, Morag. The dark's fucking terrifying at the best of times, let alone when you have dead crew. The man who didn't understand emotions of others unless he'd been there patted my hair gently. Sorry about grabbing your throat. Even though I didn't want to, I released Scout to the dark. I left all the doors open, lost count how many corridors I went through, but I reckon the kitchen was one more door over. Hopefully there will still be an emergency torch there. Scout took me by my shoulders and pointed me in the right direction, before putting my feet to the deck where my maglocks engaged. I could hear him stomping ahead until he met the closed door. With far more ease than I had, he pulled the lock lever and turned the wheel. Dim lights that felt blinding after the pitch black greeted us. Teddy was in the kitchen. The cooker was on backup so a failure wouldn't ruin dinner, Teddy told us. I just plugged the emergency system into it. The kitchen and ops have basic functions. Lights, comms, the cooker. He waved vaguely at the dim light above the kitchen table. His voice was so quiet, and he had something in his hands. What you got there? Scout asked. Oh, just one of my samples. Teddy let it sit suspended in the air. Someone has been going through my stuff in my lab. His eyes narrowed at Scout. I came to tell the captain. And she is... I asked him. Teddy shrugged and pointed to Ops. The hatch was slightly ajar. Scout turned and climbed the ladder while I grabbed a coffee canister from the cupboard. My hands shook so badly I could barely pull the mouthpiece open and bring it to my lips. Caffeine probably wasn't what I needed, but the normalcy felt calming. A moment later, Scout's maglocks were back on the ladder. Cap's dead. I turned towards Teddy. His face looked truly alien in the emergency light. He said nothing but nodded slowly at Scout's words, while gently turning the rock sample in the air. Studying it. It gave me the creeps. How? When? I spluttered, locking my coffee to the table before I spilled it. Scout came to stand before me. Not sure when, but not long ago. She's been strangled. Know anything about that, Teddy? Teddy turned his head slightly in Scout's direction and raised his eyebrows, never taking his eyes off his specimen. Nimue is stronger than me. How would I have the strength to strangle her? His detachment sent chills up my spine. Whoever it was used a tourniquet. Even Morag could have strangled her with that. I see. Teddy grazed his finger over the floating sample, then brushed it over his lips like he was applying lipstick. It's alive, you know. What the fuck you talking about? Scout closed his fingers, forming a fist. The sample. It's alive, living and void. I don't know what it is, but it sings. I wanted to study it more, but somebody has been in my lab. I came to tell Nimue. Is that before or after you killed her? Scout turned to me. Morag, we need to do something about the freak. He's lost it. A cloud passed over Teddy's face. I didn't kill her. I certainly know that. Where were you, Scout? Teddy lazily rolled his head in Scout's direction, fixing the far bigger man with an almost drunken stare. Seriously, Teddy? Scout came back to get me. Yes, but how quickly? Frankly, Morag, your blindness to the fact that you share your body with a clinical sociopathic murderer is astounding. The speed at which Scout disengaged his maglock boots from the deck and moved to grab Teddy was startling. I darted forwards and grabbed Scout's arm. I was pissed at Teddy bringing up my love life yet again, but I didn't want to see him murdered before my eyes. I yanked at Scout's arm. Scout, let go! Scout turned his face to me. His expression was pure, calculated fury, but he did release the scientist. Teddy coughed. I have already set a distress beacon going. He breathed hard and plucked the sample from the air, then headed for the door. If you could refrain from murder until help arrives, I would appreciate it. I would like to get these specimens back to the Science Academy. Perhaps you could shag while you wait and expend some of that homicidal energy. With that, he slipped through the door. The last barb was more lively than Teddy had been in the entire conversation, even with Scout threatening to kill him. Still, this wasn't the Teddy I knew. But what did I know about Scout? Hell, what did I know about myself? I turned to face Scout. He was staring at me. Not all clinical psychopaths are murderers. The way he said it gave me chills, like this was something he'd heard before. He turned and left, heading toward the crew quarters. I slowly sat down at the table, pulled the strap over my knees, and cried. In Ops, an alarm went off. I dragged my head up from where I'd let it relax to vague out. I looked around, but I was the only one in the kitchen. I climbed to my feet and went up the ladder. Nimue's body was hunched over the center console. The swath of fabric around her neck floated away like it was caught in a bleak breeze. Small bubbles of liquid hung in the air around her. I didn't want to consider what they were. Had Nimue cut the power, or was she investigating the blackout? Perhaps Teddy had done it. Had I? The panel chirped again, reminding me why I entered Ops. I leaned over what was once Carrie's chair to see it was an incoming message. This is Captain Opal of the Mines Retreat salvage ship. We received your distress call and are on our way. Hang in there. The message cut off. I checked the timestamp. It took almost an hour to reach us over the distance. They weren't going to be arriving anytime soon. But they were coming. I decided to let Teddy and Scout know. I headed for the ladder, avoiding our former captain and her orbiting spray of bubbles to jump down with a sharp push off the top bar. My feet hit the floor and I grabbed an emergency torch off the table before going through the kitchen door. I was greeted by an odd metallic taste. Not quite the usual burnt smell of space that clings to everything. I made my way forwards, holding the little torch in front of me. I walked through these corridors every day, yet they looked alien. Deep shadows danced with the movement of my light. I went slowly, watching and listening for anything. Anybody. Something glanced past my head, leaving a wet feeling. I pushed it away and shone the light on it. It was Teddy's rock. My hand's movement through the air left a greasy feeling on my palm. I looked up to see Teddy standing in the next corridor. I kept the torch low so I didn't blind him. Hey, Teddy, good idea on the distress call. He ignored me. Come on, Teddy. Don't be like that. Me and Scout, it's complicated. I wasn't taking sides. Morag. For a split second, I thought it was Teddy talking until the light highlighted Scout on the other side of Teddy. You're chatting with him, but Teddy's not looking so hot. Scout's voice was strange. What do you mean? I mean, his throat's missing. Say again? I spluttered. He's dead. His throat's all cut up, and he's got this weird look like... Teddy slowly turned to face me. The hair stood up on the back of my neck. His smiling face was a bloody pulp, and one arm stretched off at an odd angle. I flicked the torch around. Floating in the air were large balls of blood. No one from a gravity well can appreciate the appearance of blood in space. Like bright red baubles suspended in the air. I felt chilled. Scout killed Teddy. Oh God, I would be next. Scout stepped past Teddy with an odd expression. I forced a smile. Hey, we've got a response on the distress call. Help is on the way. It will be here in a matter of moments. We just need to stay alive so they can help us. I was on the verge of hysterics and my voice squeaked. I felt the familiar vague wave coming over me. Please don't let me blank out. I need to stay alive. Help us? Scout asked. Yes, they can help us catch the killer. Obviously, we have a stowaway that's done all this. I desperately grabbed at straws. Scout was circling me. You think that's who it is? Who done all this? Some kind of stowaway? It sounded like bullshit to me, too. But then Scout paused as if thinking it over before nodding. All right, let's go hunt a killer. I hated the way he said it, but I agreed enthusiastically. Scout was so damn fit. I was dead if it came to fighting him off. It took all of my strength to not glance at Teddy as I moved past. That is what I will become if I don't keep my wits about me. I shook my head to clear it. Hey, Morag, you okay? Scout's voice made me flinch. Yeah, it's just those vague feelings I get sometimes. Nothing to worry about. Even to my ears, I sounded strained. He gestured toward the door. Okay, lead the way. The last thing I wanted to do was put my back to him, but I did. I couldn't think of any reasonable way of saying I didn't want to. As I crept through the dark corridor, I bit my lip, trying not to cry. It tasted oddly greasy. Scout walked closely behind me. Where was I leading us? My mind raced. Deck 2, maintenance corridor, the last place we were together. It was a long stretch of multiple sections where we were working and had the docking airlock where help would arrive. It was also where our tools were stored. Hey, Morag, you notice all this sticky stuff all over the ship? I flinched at the sound of his voice and shone the torch back at him. What? He closed his eyes to the bright light and put his hand up to shield his face. Shine it on the wall. He waved as if he could push the light away. I did as suggested. Scout was right. There were smears all over the wall. No one died down here. It's not blood, I responded, resolutely continuing on. Maybe it's just Teddy's jizzy spunt rocks. I let out a barking laugh. At that moment, I was terrified of Scout, yet his wrong humor felt normal. Say, Morag, where are we going? He started the Atmos cycle for the next section as we moved out of the habitat zone. I was dreading he would ask. I didn't want any chance he might remember the tools that I was heading for. Please don't let him notice my fear. No particular direction, just going where's familiar. I tried to open the door. I recall getting pretty familiar down here. He sounded very calm. You know people's heads. Sometimes they do things they don't know not to do. Was this a confession? I prayed I would make it to our tools. I guess. I pulled at the lock lever. Scout reached around me to draw the lock lever down and turn the door wheel. It was an intimate position I had been in so many times before, but never feeling this afraid of him. His breath was hot against my neck. Tell me more about these vague spells. His question caught me off guard. Was this Scout's weird dismissal of everything going on and just chatting? The door opened, and I stepped away from him into the gap. Oh, you know, I get stressed. My head goes vague and I blank out. I don't remember things clearly. Who said or did what? Sometimes it's a total blur. I gave a half shrug. It wasn't a lie. That was what was happening with increasing frequency. What would he do with the information? I prayed he wouldn't notice the sweat beading on my forehead. So you could, I guess, say or do something without remembering it? I swallowed as I made my way to the next door. Shit! Was he setting me up as an alibi? I guess. I yanked hard on the lock lever, which came jerkily down, and then turned the wheel. The door cranked open, and there were all our tools, neatly stowed along the walls. Scout took a breath. So, in one of these spells, I swallowed and stomped resolutely forwards. Could you have maybe... I paused and leaned towards the handheld laser cutter. Killed the entire crew because you wanted to get out of deep space? Shit, he was going to try and pin it on me if he didn't kill me first. I lunged for the cutter. Scout was quicker and knocked my hand away. Morag, I like you. I really do. And you're a great shag. But I'm not going to let you get away. But why, Scout? Why does it have to be this way? He shrugged one shoulder. You tell me. It's your head on the block. He laughed like he'd made a clever joke. I went for the cutter again. He smacked me away a second time, knocking the torch out of my hand. Christ, he's toying with me. We stood facing each other, the spinning torch between us shining light on his feet, then at the bulkhead above my head. Stalemate. We were frozen to the spot, each watching the other. Light shot up, then down as the torch spun. Scout tilted his head toward the laser cutter. I'm not going to let you get away with trying to kill me. Like I said, I like you. But if you try anything, I'll kill you. That's just how it's got to be. I can imagine the force it would have taken to smash Teddy's head into the wall. He was just a kid on his first trip out. You're a monster, an unfeeling monster. Scout sighed. It's not the first time I've heard that. My eyes were on the torch. Light up, light down, light up. I grabbed the torch as it shone above my head and flashed it in his eyes, diving sideways, not at the cutter, but towards the impact riveter. As I hoped, blinded by the torchlight, Scout kicked off his maglock boots like he had when he went for Teddy and lunged in the wrong direction. I yanked the riveter off the wall. As Scout realized his mistake, I blasted him squarely in the chest. Without maglock boots holding him in place, the impact sent him diving backwards through the door. I started winding the door wheel frantically. I could see him tumbling through the open air, desperately trying to find something to hold and stabilize. I willed the door to close more quickly. Morag, he roared. I'll kill you. I could have let it slide. I get it. I really do. Even if you don't know what you are doing, deep space is lonely. It's efficient to get people out of the way. But trying to kill me? No, I can't let that fly. He continued spiraling away. My heart was pounding. If he made the other side and pushed off before I could close the door, I was dead. His feet hit the other end, and he kicked off just as the door I had been frantically winding shut. I leapt to the lock lever. He grabbed it on the other side. The stiffness of the lever and both of us pushing opposite ways meant neither of us could move it properly. I kept a death grip on it and reached for the mechanism to manually cycle Scout's Atmos. Once started, it couldn't be overridden. No power in the corridor meant no sensors to pick up the heat signature and stop the Atmos venting. But he could still override the door on his side if he could open it before the cycle engaged. I turned, desperately looking for a way to survive, praying he wouldn't get the door open before he hit vacuum. The airlock, it's on its own circuit. If I could cross the threshold and shut the door, I could lock it. There was no way to manually open it from the corridor. I would have powered comms to signal the mine's retreat and a data pad. I imagined Scout hammering on the door, trying to get in and kill me. It took all my mental reserves to take my hand off the lock lever and sprint for the airlock. I spun the wheel, closing the door to the corridor, and then pulled the lock lever, sealing myself in the airlock. There was a light above the door. It was still green, meaning the door wasn't electronically locked. I opened an access panel and pulled out the data pad. The airlock sensors showed Scout's corridor was now void of Atmos. I frowned. Scout's heat signature was still registering strong. As I watched, it hovered at the door before slowly moving the other way. That meant Scout was still conscious and moving deeper into the vacuum of the Occam's Razor's corridors. The dot disappeared out of range. I checked the Atmos levels again. It was definitely vented. Scout should be dead. But then how was he moving through the ship? What was he planning to do to come and kill me? Safely on the other side of the airlock door, I stare at the green lock light. I can barely breathe. I wait for green to turn red. Red means electronically locked. Red means safe. Eventually, the light clicks to red and I let out a ragged breath. A grinding sound stops and starts, and I turn towards the outer door as it gets slightly louder. The light above the outer door is red. It is locked. The grinding continues. I feel my mind vaguing out as I strain to hear the sound under the echoes of my own ragged breath. Scout was dead. He had to be. Scout, who saw a dead body as just an alive one that ain't breathing no more. Scout, who argued with Carrie. Scout, who knew I didn't like everyone knowing we shagged. Nimue suspected Scout. Was he the last person to see Teddy? Teddy was the last one to see Captain Nimue. Scout said that with a tourniquet, Teddy could have killed the captain. Creepy Teddy, with his weird slimy rocks he thought were alive. Scout killed Teddy and wanted to kill me. I just killed him. With my eyes closed, I replay my conversations with Scout. Him asking about vaguing out, saying some killings made sense, saying he could let it go. My eyes snap open. What could I have done in a blackout? Did I kill Teddy? Did I kill the others? My mind vagues out for the briefest moment and I sway like seagrass. Did I kill everyone? My fear rises. All the glitches, the opening airlock. That was this airlock, and it wasn't far from where we were working maintenance. No, I remind myself. I couldn't have opened the airlock. I was with Scout shagging. I scrunch my eyes closed to try and clear the fog of vagueness. When I open them, I notice shimmery smudges on the walls. The grinding sound continues. I reach out and touch the greasy smears. They are spread from one side of the airlock to the other. It looks like the marks on Carrie and Nimue, like the air around Teddy. Did anyone check the airlock that glitched? I ask the air. I think furiously. Carrie was going to, but then she never came back. I hold up the datapad again. Little by little, I realize the grinding sound is the airlock door wheel, not the inner one, but the outer door. I look above it. The light is still red. It is locked. Hope pierces through me. Could this be the salvage ship already? The mine's retreat coming to rescue me? Slowly, I hold up the datapad and use the airlock's limited sensors to check the outside of the ship. There's nothing. The camera is grainy, but I can see the stars. There's definitely no ship there. My stomach churns. The datapad shakes in my hands. I flick it from the cameras to the ship's schematics with the heat sensors. There's my dot in the airlock. There is a second dot. For a brief moment, I think it's Scout at the inner airlock door, having survived the Atmos vent. Then I realize the dot is on the other side of the outer airlock door. It's outside the Occam's razor. Scout didn't kill anyone. I didn't kill everyone. The explanation was not so simple. I start to cry. The door wheel begins to turn. The tiny spheres of my own tears start creeping towards the door, drawn to what should be the vacuum-sealed edge. The grinding sound gets louder. The red light above the outer airlock door turns green. Green means unlocked.
That was Jade C. Wildy's The Simplicity of Disputed Assertions, as read by Josie Babin. living in that formerly abandoned house on the corner, the one across the street from the cemetery, the one with all those cats lounging about, you will find Josie, happily narrating horror stories. No one has seen her human companion lately, but the cats do look well fed. Not that those things have anything to do with one another. In between stories, she works on a long list of house projects and car projects, but best of all, she gets to work on lab projects, growing cells into medicine, hopefully making the world a little healthier in the not-so-far-off future. If you're ever in San Diego, stop by to say hi. She'll introduce you to her cats. Thank you, Josie. Well, children of the night, the hour is late, and we've run out of tales to tell. For now. Tales to Terrify is made possible by the tremendous generosity of our supporters on Patreon and PayPal. Incredible fans like Lestle Baxter, Amanda Carrillo, Amanda Gottfried, and Orion D, Hegre, whose generous support keeps these lights on and flickering ominously. If you're not a supporter, head over to patreon.com/Tales to Terrify. You'll find all kinds of perks, like ad-free episodes, bonus content, and one-of-a-kind collectibles. Every dollar goes back into this show, and we appreciate your support so much. Want another way to support the show that doesn't cost you a cent? Head over to Podchaser, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts and drop us a 5-star review. You'll not only put an unnaturally wide smile on our faces, but help new listeners discover our terrifying tales, too. You can show your love of the show out in the world with some Tales to Terrify merch. TalesToTerrify.com/merch will take you to our TeePublic store, where we've got a great collection of creepy custom and curated designs. Tales to Terrify is produced by Seth Williams, Meredith Morgenstern, Andrew Gibson, Crystal Hammond, Spencer Disparty, and myself, Drew Sebastini, with original theme by Nebulous Entertainment. Tales to Terrify is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license. Join us again next week as we face the terrors within with more Tales to Terrify.